UFO, and how many people have actually had a close encounter? Close encounters? Yeah? Encounter. Not close? Encounter. Yeah. How many people have seen a UFO? Okay. All right. Well, I must confess total ignorance about UFOs. I mean, I've read a lot over the last few years, but if you came here tonight to get an answer to the UFOs, I'm not going to give it to you. I am going to give you my view of what they might be, and it's quite intriguing phenomena is. But we're going to explore some of the possibilities. Okay. Next. Okay. Has anybody ever seen an alien like this?
It's a human baby.
Oh, Louise. Take all the fun out of it. Yeah. Yeah. It is true that many of the pictured aliens do look a lot like the human embryo, and we'll have a chance to come back to that toward the end of the talk. Next. Okay, just before we get started, I'm just going to bring up a couple of things. How many have read Richard Hoagland's The Face on Mars? It's up at the far left corner, The Face on Mars. And the question is, did aliens or extraterrestrials actually put that there for our benefit? Before we completely buy that, one of the reasons I'm putting these 3 or 4 slides at the beginning up is because I want to bring out at the very beginning our projective abilities. If you believe that the top one was put there by the aliens, then you have to also accept the NASA pictures of the one on the bottom, the right. The right one is Kermit the Frog, and the left is the happy face. And you wonder if these two were also put there. In other words, human beings have this ability to want there to be extraterrestrials, benevolent, omniscient entities that give us the answer or provide us with various qualities. And so it's easy to project onto data our feelings, hopes, and wishes, and our paranoia too. Next. I mean, did aliens give us civilization? Were they the gods that the myths talked about that gave us civilization? Next. Are we putting our hopes on are we putting out next? Along with all the hopes and wishes, of course, is a lot of paranoia. The top left, if you read John Keel, is of course the Men in Black. I mean, the conspiracy theory of UFOs. There's hundreds of them, I guess the question is all this stuff correct? Is all of it correct, or could it be, next, that everything you know is wrong? Probably not. Next. And this, of course, if for you people who are really searching hard, is J.R. Bob Dobbs' cosmology of the Church of the Subgenius. So if you wish to get tangled up in the answer, it's probably here somewhere. Next. So it finally comes down to what is reality, and we're going to look at that in regard to the UFO. I mean, try to make some kind of sense out of the UFO in regard to what is real. Next. It's usually divided into 2 different camps. That is the sort of outer world consensual sensory motor data. I mean, can we verify it? Is it tangibly true? Can we study it scientifically and so forth? Versus, and primarily tonight, I have to admit that I'm talking primarily tonight about contact, about alien encounters, okay? But I wish to include all of it, but that's primarily what I'm going to talk about tonight. And so that one primarily includes inner experience, emotions, motivations, memories, dreams, illusions, hallucinations, archetypal manifestations, all kinds of altered states. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more depth when we get into temporal lobe after discharge, temporal lobe kindling, temporal lobe epilepsy, and what the temporal lobes and that part of the brain do in regard to memory, anticipation, expectations, and so forth. But primarily, I think we can divide it into these two basic categories of inner experience versus outer world. If you've read Arthur's theory, you know that we analyze every situation primarily into 4 component parts. These two would be considered to be on the left what we call projective body, and on the right objective body. Objective body on the right because we're dealing with sensory data and muscular movement. That's, in other words, feeling and movement part of the body. Objective sensation, objective muscular movement. And on the left over there, we're dealing with projective feeling, that is emotions, motivations, and projective feelings, that's emotions, projective movement, which is motivations. And we include memory, dreams, and all these other things in there too because they're experiential. The beautiful thing about Arthur's theory is he's developed an ontology based on the study of dimension that truly divides these things into 4 component parts. Next. Let me just quickly bring in the other 2 parts to make this picture complete. Projective mind and objective mind. In other words, if we just dealt with somebody's inner experience of what happened to them, what they felt, what they remembered, that which happened inside them that they recalled, versus what could be objectively verified, the outer world, we would not have the whole picture. The UFO requires that you bring in 2 more categories. One is, what's the purpose? I mean, no matter what it is, whether they're extraterrestrials actually visiting, whether it's some kind of archetypal manifestation, exactly what? Is their purpose that of enlightenment, salvation, dominion, a cosmic joke? Think of anything you want purpose-wise. What's the purpose? How come we're not contacted? How come they don't land and say, here we are? What's the purpose? And the second thing is some kind of conceptual formulation, which is, of course, different from the objective and projective body, the inner and outer experience. And that is it involved in a universal developmental process, some kind of intergalactic hierarchical rules and regulations, paranoid schemes and theories? I mean, you know, we have 1,000,001 paranoid conceptualizations of the whole UFO phenomena. Those are theories. Those are conceptual grasps at the whole UFO phenomena. And then, of course, we have the latest projective zeitgeist paradigms. I mean, crystals, Atlantis, whatever is on the market today is sort of incorporated into frequently into the UFO phenomena. And I've got several books that can show you that that is indeed the case, that when a particular thing hits the media market, a particular new age or type of current zeitgeist, that this is frequently incorporated into encounters. Next. This is just what I talked about, the 4 completely different types of dichotomy, I mean, of ways to analyze any kind of situation, right? The projective mind, which is non-conceptual, non-experiential, that which is decision, intuitive insight, and its projective, objective realm, which is some kind of mind's eye view of it, which is in space. Okay, next. All right, and to really grasp this, I can't just jump to the end point, as much as a lot of people have heard me talk before would like, because they're probably bored with going back over reviews of Arthur's theory. I'll try to make it shorter than before for the people that have heard Arthur's theory summarized before, but let me see if I can break it down into the theory of process into 3 basic components, 3 premises. The first one is that of rotation. If you read Arthur's books, you realize that he long ago equated angular momentum and the quantum of action. In other words, pure action and rotation. okay, the same measure formulae. And in geometry of meaning, he realized that the angles of rotation, which he could show existed or could be derived with the measure formulae from physics, that is, based on mass, length, and time. Next slide. And the zodiacal signs fit perfectly, they overlap. The same kind of thing was being said. In other words, within rotation itself is the potential for everything. And the quantum of action, in the sense Arthur's talking about it, which is, of course, the quantum of uncertainty, the quantum of freedom, Planck's constant, light, if you wish, in this sense, is totally outside of space and time. Okay? It's pure rotational action, the essence of everything, the source of everything. Next. Okay. If you take two rotations and put them perpendicular to each other, what you come up with is the torus, which is a sort of a double rotation, the vortex, if you wish. And Arthur believes that the torus is the essence of process or time structure. And what he does is equates, first of all, it's known that the mapping problem of a torus is such that if you're going to put countries, say, on a torus, on the surface of a torus, then you need 7 colors to distinguish the countries. It's a 7-color theorem of the torus. He equates the stages of the arc of process with the 7 colors of the torus or vortex. My first premise was that rotation is the potential for everything. Rotational action contains potential for everything. The second premise is that the double rotation, i.e. the torus, provides the structure, the time structure, if you wish, since it's moving, of the process. And what we have here is this pure potential at the top left up there. Let me get my little thing out here. Pure potential starts here, takes on degrees of constraint as it comes down. This is pure freedom, this is pure constraint. Takes on degrees of constraint as it comes down at this point where it's totally fixed, molecular realm of Earth. It makes a turn, gains control of phase timing, and moves back up to the same degrees of freedom and constraint that it came down through with control. In other words, this side is controlled, this side isn't. So what we're talking about is a 7-stage, 4-level, point, line, plane, and solid level. These are dimensions, and this is the essence of his dimensional ontology. All right? And you can see how simple, how elegantly simple it is. The first one up here is point-like in that the goal projected over here and the goal completed, point-like. The second level, this is level 2, the second level starts off with charge or binding. In other words, it moves by charge. This one over here uses charge to move because it's controlled. This part takes on a center, and this part is used to disperse centers, organization or seeding. So it's real simple at its core. Uncontrolled line, controlled line. Uncontrolled plane, controlled plane. Solid, if you wish to make it real simple. Next. These vortices themselves contain vortices, in other words, little 7s within 7s, arcs within arcs, toruses within toruses. So these particular stages have substages, the substages have sub-substages all the way through. You can see that the photon, the quantum of action which began it all, which sustains it all the way through, loses freedom, takes on constraint as it becomes particles, atoms, molecules, cells, and plants. Embryos and animals, man and God. Okay? You can see the double rotation here as a cutaway of the torus. Any questions so far? Next. Just another brief view. This is a summary of the second part. Remember, the first part was pure potential, the rotational potential. The angles of rotation have the meaning in the universe. And this is the torus, the structure itself, with its 4-level, 7 stages. You can see that these same 4 levels can be actually put into dichotomies like we showed originally. All right? Sort of coming back around this way. So the first level, of course, once again, is potential. The second is substance, flow, or value. The third is form. And the fourth is form substance. Potential, substance, form, form, substance. Next. Okay, this is the third component, and the one that I've been most interested in. It's the dynamics, the inner process, the way the torus or the arc works. It works by 7 triads. And the first 3 I'm going to show you in just one diagram can be remembered because they're on the cover of Reflexive Universe. That is, the 3 types of evolution, these 3. The other 4 can be reduced if we take the 1s and the 7s out, and I'll show you a way of abbreviating that to remember it. So in essence, I'm trying to get 7 things to be reduced simply to a diagram of 3, and then the other into the 4 into a simpler diagram. Let me show you with the next slide. Okay, these are the 3 types of evolution. The organization, that is the 5th stage, of form, that is the 3rd stage, which occurs via the genetics of the cell. Okay? This is what scientists usually study. The second type, completely different, is the animation, 6th stage, of charged substance, and that is the instincts of the soul. This is different from the molecular cellular realm of organization of form, different. And then the third one up here is the realization, 7th stage, of potential, 1st stage, via insights of spirit. Okay? Completely different ways of evolving, all built in on each other, all using this 4th stage of physical molecular matter, our bodies and so forth, in which to move on. Okay? Next. All right. This is, I'm going to show you the other 4 triads, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 1st stage and the 7th stage out of them, okay, and just reduce it to the inner dynamics. In other words, there's 2 push, I call them push triads, and 2 pull triads. If you realize that the first one pushes from the 1st stage of potential, you can drop that for the moment and just think of it as that which brings the process down the arc in a yang-like way. 1, 2, 3. The yang part is compulsive flow and aggressive charge. I've got these myths up here because last time I talked about these ancient myths. I'm going to talk about those real briefly in just a moment. This yang part is sort of masculoid or masculine in the sense of you can see the aggressive part, and you can see the fixed focus or mental image, which is a yang property. It's sort of that aggressive, full speed ahead, and the ability to visualize things. I mean, this can be seen in mundane ways by looking at the men glued to the TV set watching the football game. Okay? I mean, you can see the aggressiveness of the compulsiveness there, and you can see the fixed focus. Sexually, you can see the compulsive charge of men, the sexual compulsion. And you can see, wow, in their mind's eye, my God, look at her, you know, this kind of mental image. Next. On the other hand, the 1, 5, 6 is sort of a yin thing in that it involves communicative growth. This is communication, verbal organization, if you wish, and inspirational value. Communicating about emotion, the essence of interpersonal relationships, romance, and all of that. I mean, it's 2 different kinds of things. And this yang part is sort of like explore the world, take it apart, break it down, see how it's put together, this urge to see it. And this yin part is pull it back together. It's like communicate, organize, and have this interpersonal value, interpersonal feelings, inspiration, these 2 components. I mean, we could talk about this for a long time, and this is it's very brief, and it probably doesn't get across, but
what's the 5, 6?
The 5, 6 is the 5th stage here and the 6th stage here. I've blown them up. Remember,
why is there a 1?
because I took the 1 out to abbreviate. The 1 is the push part, the potential, that's part of the triad that started it all off, should be up here. Okay? The 1, 2, 3, and the 1, 5, 6. I took the 1, which is just pure potential, out of it.
It's a given.
It's a given. Trying to make this simpler. Next. And then the second part of that, the crisscross part, I talked about last time also, in that the most ancient myths that we have are these primordial myths of what I call left brain, right brain. That's my definition. You'll see why later. But at each ritual enactment of New Year's in the ancient times, several thousand years ago, all over you can see the samples of the various countries, Sumerian, Babylonian, Egyptian, Canaanite, whatever. We had these two components. We had a watery serpent here, always killed and sectioned by a storm god, a lord of lingua. The storm god, because as Mercy Eliade says, the thunder or storm part was equivalent to linguistic command. And we also had a dead tree god over here, a mortal tree god, animated by the Queen of Heaven. These two were ritually interacted over and over again, were carried out in the New Year's festival, first day of spring among the ancients. Next. So this is what I call the 2-5, second stage and the fifth stage. The triad is, of course, 7. This is the pull component. I'm leaving the 7 out, just like I left the 1 out in the push triads. All right? You can see that this compulsive flow is organized by Zeus chopping the serpent, Typhon in this case, into pieces. Just like vocalization and syntax organize the stream of consciousness, if you wish. It's that compulsive flow thing. And of course, if you really studied left and right brain, these are the two components, for instance, of the left brain, is that compulsive flow, posterior left brain, we'll get into that, and the organization, the verbal organization, the communication aspect, which needs this flow in order to section it, like we do words with vocalization and syntax. Next. The other 7-3-6 part here is the Queen of Heaven animating the dead tree god. All right? This dead tree god, the deadness and the tree indicated the static component. In ancient times, they would actually have a planar emblem of this tree god that they would cry and mourn about until the god was animated. This represents fixed focus, or mental icon, if you wish. This is the iconic part right here. And the Queen of Heaven represented inspirational value, beauty, love, all the emotional, animational properties. All right, next. So in summary, again, we have the 2-3-5-6 or 2-5-3-6. Okay, 2-3 yang, 5-6. Back up the arc, yin part. The 2-5 left brain, the 3-6 right brain. I know this is a lot to bring in, but it's pertinent to getting to the UFOs later. All right, because the beauty of this theory is you have to grasp the nuts and bolts to be able to use it in more complex ways. Any questions here before we move on, or not?
You want to explain why there's only 7 committees or 7?
How about you, Arthur? You want to explain why there's only 7 committees or 7 triads?
Have you any chart of those 7 committees? Well, no.
No, I don't.
All right. You think of 7 points or 7 elements or 7 persons. You could have 7 committees such that no 2 committees shared more than 1 person. That's really the crucial rule. There has to be 7 rules, and they're postulates of projective geometry. But I'll use them to define the stages of the kingdoms. For instance, there's one that became the 5th stage. You can't have more than 3 persons on a committee, or 3 points in a set. Well, that sounds like an inhibitive thing, but it actually has the opposite effect, because it makes people build more houses. Or if you couldn't have more than 3 people in a house, then you'd have to have more houses. So it's the basis of the principle of growth. Well, the committees are, I use them on the front of the book, that logo, the three triangles. One is DNA evolution at the bottom, and the evolution of animal instinct from 2, 4, and 6, and finally 1, 4, and 7 is comprehension, recognizing the way something works and using it. So it's not, instinct is based on learning a routine by trial and error. For instance, they can teach apes to pile crates up to get fruit. Well, then they put the fruit outside the cage on the floor, and he's learned how to pile the crates, so he piles the crates there. It doesn't do any good to get the fruit, but he is unable to put cause and effect together and use a stick to pull the fruit to him. This was a demonstration of the difference between these two kinds of intelligence, one based on trial and error, which applies only to that kind of situation, and the other based on understanding. Well, Frank carried I made the use of 3 of the committees for these 3 types of evolution, but Frank extended it to what he's telling you about now. What are they now? 2, which is the basic energy, which is cut up by the storm god to create the universe, organize the universe. And then the fixed image, the emasculated tree god. Remember Aphrodite, which is Venus? Did you tell him that, Frank?
No, I didn't. That was last talk. I'm trying to make it shorter this time, Arthur.
I see. Well, I'm taking...
No, I just...
But if you don't take a little longer,
I know. Yeah.
it slips right past.
That's true.
But Aphrodite was born of the foam. Well, the foam came from the testicles of the emasculated tree god, or sky god, whichever it is. And I guess we haven't really, there's one committee left that isn't fully accounted for.
Which one is that?
256.
There isn't a 256.
No, you can't know it, I'm sorry. 156, isn't it?
The yin part. This part.
I think it's 156. We haven't figured out what that is.
Oh, I think we have, really. Let me go on to the next slide just for a sec. My point was this. This is what for the last, when I met Arthur, I started checking these things out and looking at cells and embryos and so forth, because Arthur had mapped out clearly light, the particles, which we're still working on since the state of the art is in disarray at this point, atoms, molecules, plants, animals, and then man, in trying to apply the principles of process theory, that is, the principles of first, second, third, and fourth level, okay, and the dynamics to these things. I went back and looked at the evolution of the components of a cell, followed the embryo through, and I've been working the last few years on the evolution of man. To my amazement, you know, not only do these things sequentially follow, but they actually capture the essence of each stage. They capture the essence of the point, line, plane, solid, and even more beautifully, they capture, say, remember we were just talking about the 2, 5, 3, 6? Yeah. I mean, they do that all the way through. And not only that, but the molecules within the component of the cells of 3 are there. In other words, there's a perfect overlap all the way up. I mean, this is too much of a coincidence to be anything but accurate, in my opinion. I mean, I think it's...
Tell them how the eye comes from the gut. I think some of those little details are...
I think, Arthur, that would take too long to do that. I mean, and I have some slides to do that, but see, that's the problem I have each time too. Is there's so much stuff here. If I take time out to get into each one of the things I've talked about before, we lose the essence of where we're going. So I'm trying to just give the essence of this thing each time. But he's talking about here that now. Let's see. Flip to, well. Let me do that in just a minute, Arthur, when I come to the animals.
Okay.
Okay, because I'm going to talk about that briefly, but I can't emphasize enough that the level is here, the actual role of each stage is here perfectly, and especially the inner dynamics are perfectly here, like the centrosphere. This is a planar looking sphere, if you wish, in the center of each cell, okay, perfect for sort of nucleating, forming an identity of the cell that controls the form, the spatial array of everything in the cell. And the cytoskeleton, that is these little animating tubules stuck out here, all nucleate on this. They are responsible. This is a perfect nucleating identity form part of the cell. This is a perfect animation, actually moves the cell. Its extensions, its flagella and so forth, actually move the cell. They move everything in the cell. This nuclear membrane endoplasmic reticulum continuum is like the ancient serpent, and it's actually broken into parts by, say, the mitochondria, which then organizes it. It actually, in other words, the storm god slays the dragon. The dead tree king is animated by the queen of heaven. You can see this all the way through, molecules, cells, embryos, all the way up. So we have too many components that fit the theory for it to be mere coincidence. And I truly believe that Arthur's really hit the way the universe works with this. And
Sounds like the human number.
I'm sorry?
Well, the span of 7 is the upper limits of an average.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
The digit span of 7, just tell person numbers.
Oh, like 7 till.
Oh yeah, if you read the paper a few years ago in the mid-50s by, I'm sorry?
George Miller?